are the universe, so beautiful. Through all of the hurt, we'll stand invincible, so beautiful. We'll take on the world. We'll take on the world.
What's up, hysterical people? I'm so excited today to welcome Octavia Ethridge to the podcast. Octavia was so inspiring to me because she has an amazing series that she's written and is planning to produce called The Matriarch. We're going to dig right into it on today's episode. So without further ado, I'd love to welcome Octavia to the podcast. Welcome, Octavia.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Awesome. We're excited to have you. So I know I just barely scratched the surface. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and then we'll dig into the matriarch.
So hello guys, my name is Octavia Ethridge. I am a Marine veteran. I went to LA Film School, got my bachelor's in film production and business entertainment. And now I'm doing my my independent film series fresh out of college. And now I'm just, trying to get these ropes turning and see what you guys love about it. See what you guys think about it.
I love it. Well, I was inspired by you and your idea and your whole concept, but let me tell our listeners how we met because it felt a little bit random to me. I don't know if you agree. We were both in this clubhouse room that was about film funding. And you spoke up at one point, and I think you asked a question, and so you were able to talk a little bit about your project. And I think at that point was the very beginning of your crowdfunding campaign. So I jumped on because it sounded intriguing to me as a feminist and in the independent filmmaking space. And I was so intrigued by what you got going on because it's really mind-blowing and really amazing. Your whole world is really like next level. So that's how I tracked you down. But I am just kind of laughing because I think I've only been on Clubhouse maybe like 3 times in my entire life. So there you go. We make connections on Clubhouse. Who knew? All right. So let's dig in to the matriarch, which I got so turned on by because I really want to live in this world. So tell us about it, Octavia.
The matriarch is my brain baby. That's what I like to call it. It's set in a sci-fi world. It's a world ran by women where men are fighting for their rights, and also queer is the standard. So being heterosexual is illegal. And pretty much the women are trying to, eliminate the male species by all means necessary, which is a lot of things that are striking. That it strikes a lot of conversations. But that was the whole point. My whole thing was men and women, too much power from anyone could be, too bad. It could be a bit of an imbalance, I should say. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So like how did you get inspired by creating this?
One of my favorite filmmakers is James Cameron, and everything that I think about, I think of it like a business. There's so many stories. It's like a million stories, right? And we're not gonna reinvent the wheel. So there's so many stories, and the main thing is just like, how can I have a story that is somewhat the same kind of feel, but also different? So for me, it was more so, what haven't we seen already? And I'm all about women empowerment. So my main thing was just like putting something that women, and also I love equality. So I didn't want to go for the race issue. I feel like it's overplayed. So I went more so with the sexuality, and I wanted to make it where, all right, the homosexuals were in a place of power, or at least, they have somewhat of a voice compared to, the heterosexuals. So I kind of like wanted to, flip the world upside down, where women were in charge and men were second class citizens, and also where homosexuality was normal. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that everybody in the world is straight, right? I mean, not straight, but gay, right? No, because even in this world, everybody's not straight. So in my world, I pretty much wanted to have it where women had the upper hand, and also homosexuality was like a given. It's one of those things that was accepted, and nobody was bashing you because you were, homosexual. So it's kind of like a place of like homosexuals have a voice, and it also amplifies and give them a different spotlight, because we don't normally see homosexual people in like, being assassins or like killers or any of that sort. So I wanted to give them a little bit of a different spotlight and a different type of role in the industry.
I love that. And I love what you said about you're flipping the world, our current world that we live in, upside down. And I think in so many ways you did, both with women being in charge and homosexuals being on the higher scale of the hierarchy as
Yeah.
compared to heterosexuals. So that's great. So why did you choose the sci-fi genre? Did you feel like that allowed you to explore these themes in a more innovative or creative way?
Yeah, sci-fi. Well, for one, sci-fi is my favorite genre. I feel like with sci-fi, there's no rules. You can make your own rules in sci-fi, right? In sci-fi, if I wanted, to create pretty much anything, like my imagination, it allows me room for imagination, I should say. Like, because it's a sci-fi world and science fiction, it could be whatever. If I wanted horses to be in charge of donkeys, I can do that. And I just love sci-fi. I feel like with sci-fi, I know when people think of sci-fi, they think of like, aliens or like some type of superpowers and stuff like that, but not necessarily. Like, sci-fi can go so far. So I decided to go with sci-fi because at least it's science fiction. It's a fiction thing, right? But it's very intentional, I should say. Like, everything that I do is intentional. It's obviously, we know it's fake, it's not real, but it's so intentional, and it's a message behind that, you know?
Yeah, I think in so many cases, I believe sci-fi has been able to be on the cutting edge of societal situations and incorporating those themes, like Star Trek had the first Black woman on screen, I think, on television. And I think it's because the audience is sort of ready to suspend their belief in what they feel is normal or normative, et cetera, even in our daily lives. So I think that's wonderful, and I love that you're able to tap into that genre to get really um, more innovative and inspirational with what you're working on. So super cool. Octavia, you were just mentioning James Cameron, and it really got me thinking. Obviously he's got so many masterpieces, but Avatar is one of the most obvious. And that being an entirely different world in this kind of sci-fi slash fantasy genre, that kind of brings a little bit to mind what you're going for, because you're really going for an entire world, even multi-seasonal, episodic journey, and with protagonists, but multiple characters that really have their own arcs, etc. So in a way, you really have to map out an entire new world. And I know folks like James Cameron and with Avatar and maybe Game of Thrones, comes to mind. Some other episodic series really have to have an entire Bible like to track and understand all the relationships between all the characters, etc. What is your process? Like, how do you approach something as large as the matriarch?
I actually got one of my favorite classes was transmedia. I have a transmedia packet that I use from school, and it pretty much has everything layered out to how to build a story world. And that's kind of like what I do. I, go from the rules, to like what people eat, pretty much break down every tier that you can think of. I break it down. And that takes some time. The matriarch is one of the things that I created. I didn't want to make it too like difficult, like where, oh, they have this type of car or they have this type of animal. Like, I still wanted to somewhat be, the same world that we live in. It's just a little bit different, and the technology is a little bit more advanced in some areas. So that's the only thing that I would say that was kind of like different from this world is some of the technology that I use throughout the series. And also, obviously, like I said, just flipping the rules of this world and making it different in that world. And I think that was like the main conflict that I had with like creating this, is like, how is the legal system? What happens if a man does this? What happens if a woman does this? So I still made it where it's kind of like the women are still in charge, but I also made it to where I didn't want to make it too unrealistic where there was just only homosexuals and not any, heterosexuals. The world has only been like this for 100 years. And the women are now now that they're in charge, they're trying to stay in charge. And how do you do that? You do that by making it somewhat impossible for procreation of the world. So women having sex with men, if I feel like if today's society was there was so many homosexuals, there will be more responsible for me, in my understanding. There will be so many more responsible adults when it comes down to having children, because then at that point, like me as a homosexual, I'm not gonna have a child if I'm not stable, if I'm not ready. But with the heterosexual, it happens, slip ups, mishaps happen. And we see so many kids that are, going through so much because the parents were not ready to have that child. But when in a homosexual world where they're forced to go to the sperm bank to have children, it's like, okay, I don't have the money to pay for sperm right now, and I also don't have the money or financially stable to have a child right now. So it makes it a little bit more difficult for us, having kids without having, the responsibility of having kids. So I think that's the pro in my world, is that there's not kids being born out of, oh, I just had a one night stand and oh, now I'm pregnant. So that eliminates that. And the people that are caught having heterosexual interactions and stuff like that, they're punished. They go to jail. A woman goes to jail for having a child with a male without going to sperm bank. She goes to prison for 15 years per child that she has. So there's a lot of stipulations when it comes to it. But yeah, that's pretty much what my thought process was. What's going to make people talk? What's going to make people think? And if the world was like this, how many children would be saved from suffering in homes that they're not wanted in? Yeah.
Yeah. As my listeners know, of course, I'm a little bit of an abortion crusader, so I totally dig what you're saying there. Yeah, purposeful choice of having children. Gee, novel concept. Let's do that everywhere. And to your point, yeah, it would be great if I wish I were a lesbian, then I wouldn't have gotten knocked up when I did, and have to deal with all those stupid dudes. But yeah, that's a whole nother podcast episode, probably. Anyway, no, this is fantastic. Yeah, I'm so intrigued. I can't wait to see this. So is this an alternative world or alternative timeline, or is it set in the future in the hopes that we could eventually get there?
It's actually set in right now. I didn't want to give it like a timestamp because, well, for one, let's say, for me being independent, right? Me doing it independently, I can't set it in the future only because I don't have the money for all this extra out technology and flying car. I'm pretty sure like 100 years from now they already have flying cars now, so I'm pretty sure they're going to be up in the air by that time. So there's like some dilemmas that I had because I'm doing it independently. But if I wasn't doing it independently, I would set it in like year 2100. I would set it in the future. But because of me doing it independently, I set it to where it's now. It's just a reverse reality. And obviously, none of the stuff, well, I can't say none of the stuff happened in the past history, but for the past 100 years, things were different. And what I like about this is that I'm not focusing on racism. I'm honestly tired of talking about racism. And I feel like with what I love about being homosexual is that we have so much freedom being homosexual. And obviously I didn't want to make this show like a fantasy land, where everything is like unicorns and everything is fine. No, I wanted to make it, man versus woman. And I wanted to have that drama there. But in reality, if it came down to it, it would be more ballrooms. It would be, stupid, like shady stuff, like drama, little small drama within the community. But if you ever go to like any type of pride, you go to a pride, everybody's just free. They're free to be who they are. They're free to wear what they want to wear without having the patriarchal things of, oh, that's a man, he shouldn't be wearing that. Like, why is he wearing that? Or that's a woman, she should be dressed a certain way. She should have on a dress, or you know what I'm saying? Like stupid shit that patriarchal societies, or like, just that hierarchy, they just made things so kind of like, this is what a man should do, this is how a woman should be, and I hate that. But when you go to Pride, you have a sense of, they call it Pride for a reason. I feel like Pride has a lot of boldness, it has a lot of pride. I'm very prideful. I'm happy. I'm able to show who I am without hiding myself. And I feel when I go to Pride events, I'm a little bit more free to be who I want to be. I don't have to worry about racism. We don't care about that.
Yeah.
When I go to homosexual clubs, I go to a men's bathroom. Women could go to a men's bathroom without having to worry about, oh my God, there's a pervert in the bathroom. Like, we don't think about that.
I
We
know.
don't. But here you have to think about that in this society. And it's so like, it's so different. It's just different. It's very different. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's
That's why I want to live in your world. I will.
yeah, just be free, be who you want to be. Nobody cares. It's just in my world, in the matriarch world, the women are first class citizens and men are second class. That's the only difference. And obviously, women are doing some bad things because they want to stay in power, but it is what it is. I'm not saying that it's right, because it's not right. What they're doing is not right. But also what we have been, enforced to do in society that we are in now, it's not right either. So
Exactly. Yeah. So would you consider the matriarch to be like a satire, or there's some commentary on our existing society to some degree, but would you call it, it's not really a comedy, right? So it's not exactly.
it actually has, it's funny. I made the matriarch so like open. You have comic relief, you
Yeah.
have drama, obviously, and you have crime. And obviously sci-fi if you want to add another genre in there. The matriarch is everything except for horror. It even has some suspense, it has thriller. It's pretty much everything except for fantasy. Well, I can't even
I mean, you got fantasy in there.
it's like borderline. I feel like borderline. I guess you would say fantasy, but it's definitely not horror. It's not a horror,
No
but
horror.
I had to go very low with it. It'd definitely be like a crime and a thriller, I would say.
Love it. Love it. And it's a series, right? So tell the listeners a little bit about your idea there to have it be a multi
Um,
series.
Yeah, so right now, my goal was to obviously, if I had the opportunity, is to get it picked up by, Netflix, Hulu, Stars, whoever, HBO, or now they call it Mac. But as of right now, well, we're kind of like on a borderline, like whether we want to just go ahead and just shoot at least 6 episodes and then see where the audience stands from there. Because they will be like short episodes. It'd be like webisodes, like 15, no more than 20 minutes max. But we're trying to shoot for 15 minutes an episode. And I feel like that's enough for people to be like, oh my God, we want to see this, we want to see more. Because obviously doing a whole season, that can cost, we're looking at just like 15-minute short film could be $20,000. So we're gonna treat it like a short film. So every 15-minute episode, we're gonna try to do $20,000. But as you see, that's a lot of money. 6 episodes, come on,
Adds up.
it's a lot
Yeah.
of money. But I feel like it definitely can work. It's just getting some, financial support behind it will be the biggest thing. But we also have a spin-off series about the code, which are pretty much assassins who are contracted out by the government to keep the matriarch from, like the Mexican cartel, the Italian mafia, African mafia. They're taking out any threat to the matriarch system. They're there to like kill them off pretty much. So they're like my female vigilantes, who are pretty much females that have been like broken or like abused or molested, any of those things. They have killed someone and they're being trained to use their power to fight against other villains and stuff like that. So they're female vigilantes.
So, are there any ethical or moral dilemmas or questions that your idea addresses? And how do in general, how do you see it fitting in or challenging the status quo of sort of the mainstream that we talked about already, society?
Yeah, I think obviously the number one thing is women running the world. and men pretty much being forced to give sperm in order to procreate, and then we're also killing them off. So it's kind of like that's one of the things they're like, that's very unethical. Like these women are asking men to do this, but in reality they're also doing this to eliminate us. They're being forced to do. Well, I'm gonna say there's some people that are being forced, which are that goes on in the the underground thing. But then you have like the men that are, hey, in order for you to get $5,000 per sperm that you give, here's they're pretty much giving I mean, that happens today too, right? To give sperm or eggs, you get paid to do that. You get paid to do it. So in this world, it's the same concept, except for there are some men that are forced to do it. And reality is the whole point is to eliminate them at the end of the day. But what they're doing, like I said, the people that they're forced to kill and kidnap are men that are beating women or killing women, or they're pedophiles. So it's not like they're just killing, off innocent men. No, they're killing off people that are bad to society, and women don't want to use that sperm of a pedophile and pass that on to their other child. So it's not a bad thing, but it's also not a good thing.
Right, but they're what's the word? They're culling the herd, right? They're getting rid of the bad sperm as part of the pool of the future procreation potential. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's interesting. Very, very fascinating. I love it. Yeah, I just love all your themes. You got a little bit of a sick mind, I think, a little bit, but in a good way. Awesome. So, for those podcast listeners who aren't on the YouTube, Octavia is a Black woman. So, this next question is more around both being Black and being young and a lesbian. Do you feel any of those categories that you're lumped in give you any specific different challenges or opportunities uniquely as a filmmaker for moving forward with a work of art like this that's anti-patriarchy, as it were?
Um, I think it's kind of like because it's such a sensitive topic, but they did the same thing in Handmaid's Tale. They had it where women were being forced to have sex with these men who are married because their wife, couldn't give birth to their child. It's the same, it's literally like this show is about everybody. And I think the main thing is because I am Black, it could be challenging. And also because I feel like that's a good question. It's kind of hard to say what it is that it would be, because I feel like being Black, there are also some limitations. There are a lot of limitations. Also being, because of the topic of the project, it also makes people shy away, like, people not gonna like this. They're not gonna, women taking charge, because this is a world ran by men, and this will hurt men egos more than it would anybody else.
You think?
And I think that's where the pushback would be. But I also want them to know, like, it's not just the women doing bad things. The men are doing bad things as well. They're doing the same thing that they were doing before. There's human trafficking. You got MRM, which is men raising men. They're human trafficking women, forcing them. This is where the Handmaid's Tale part come in. They're forcing them to have sex with them. They're making them have male babies because they're taking a drug called codeine that produces Y chromosomes, so that they are forced to have men babies, right? So, well, male babies. So they're keeping these women around, and they're pretty much using her as a cow or animal. They're having sex with this person until they no longer can have kids anymore. And then when they no longer can produce any more kids, they kill them off. So it's not like this is a show where the women are doing bad. The men are doing stuff as well, because their whole thing is, we want to take back over the world. We want to recreate the norm. In order to recreate the norm, we have to repopulate the population. And how are we going to do that? Well, the sperm farm is only allowing women, girl babies, to be adopted or born, So how do we set that number back high again? Well, we got to do it ourselves. We got to rape women to force them to have male babies so that we can get back in power and take back over the, so it's again, this show is about, it's not just for women, it's not just for gay people, it's not just for straight people, it's for everyone. It comes from everyone's standpoint, or point of view, black, white, Asian, whoever. Again, this show is not about race. It's literally about man versus woman. And you're either gender, you know what I'm saying? And for those that are not, gender conforming, they go by they or them. This is a show for everyone, like I said. So yeah, that's pretty much, I feel like that's the best way to answer that question, because I feel like it's one of those things that, like, it's like this can either set me off to the right path that I want to go, or it can push back. But either way it goes, whatever is meant to happen is meant to happen, and I'm totally okay with either or.
Yeah, no, it's going to open a lot of doors for you, I'm sure. I will make this statement and hopefully it doesn't come back to haunt me. But yeah, anybody that pushes back on you, I feel like it sounds like you're really just taking the current themes and you're just flipping them upside down. Like, we already have corrupt people. We already have rapists and pedophiles and, all of the bad stuff
Right.
that happen in this world. And you're just kind of flipping it on its head. And so, like you said, you're not making the women some amazing gender in this case. They're corrupt and bad. And, in a way, you're just basically saying that whoever's in power is sort of the evil that's corrupting and forcing people, or making people make decisions or take chances that are illegal or corrupt or, immoral, etc. And I think that's what we're seeing already, just in the news today in this world.
Absolutely.
So, on that note, but it's cathartic, at least for me, because it is flipped on its head, and it's so refreshing to at least imagine, even if it's imaginary, a world where there is a different norm, a different gender norm, and different, perhaps, unethical or immoral practices that happen with respect to trying to procreate the race. That happens in this world.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Octavia. I can't wait to see the first episode and hopefully many more after that and multiple seasons to come. So we're all pulling for you. And we'll be sure to put links in the notes for this episode to ways that they can support you as well and track your progress. So thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your inspiration and your amazing, kind of wacky, but wonderful mind and intriguing thoughts about how to make this project come to life. So we love to hear it, and really, really pulling for this. Go
Thank
the matriarch! Woo!
Yes.
Thanks again, Octavia.
Thank you so much.
Stay hysterical, everybody.
We are the universe, so beautiful. Through all of the hurt, we'll stand invincible, so beautiful. We'll take on the world. 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 We'll take on the world.